Hello there, Jeff here with the Bigshooterist channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to discuss sound suppressors. And we're going to get a little bit more technical than normal. We're going to discuss the differences between a can with wipes, a suppressor that uses baffles, and an artificial environmental suppressor. Stick around. So our last video, when we discussed sound suppressors, kind of gave a pretty good general idea of how they work. Today we're going to go past general and get a little bit more technical. Now the first sound suppressors that were around looked quite similar to today's suppressors, at least on the outside, but on the inside they were much different. They included a pliable wipe material, similar to a neoprene or a soft rubber, and the bullet would actually have to pass through the soft rubber before it exited the muzzle. Now, that was really good because this pliable material sealed up behind the round, and then that bled the gases off slower. And as you saw in our last video, the speed of the gas leaving the firearm is what contributes a lot to the noise. The downfall is, number one, it would wear out after a certain amount of rounds, and number two, it actually made contact with the bullet, and that created less accuracy. Moving on to current suppressors, the most common design is a system that uses a series of baffles and an expansion chamber. And that's not really letting the cat out of the bag, really, because there are an awful lot of types of baffles, a lot of types of materials, a lot of different angles and cuts that determine how well that baffle works. And there are even monolithic baffle designs. So you can actually have a tube inside of the tube that contains all of the cuts that it used to take a stack of several baffles to achieve. So the third type of sound suppressor is referred to in the industry as an artificial environmental suppressor. What the hell is that? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're introducing an artificial environment to the can. And these were very, very common, going back several decades. It allowed you to take a can that had much more volume, make it much, much smaller, and also limit the amount of noise. Now, the medium that you would add to it, a real common one used to be grease. You've all heard the term greasing somebody. Well, that words mean things, and that has meaning somewhere. A grease would be injected into the suppressor, and it would cause a phase change. Any time you change the phase, you utilize energy. And if you watched the last video, you know that the energy, the massive expulsion of gases is where we're getting an awful lot of our sound from. So if you have a phase change from a solid to a liquid, or from a liquid to a gas, then that equates to less residual noise that we hear. So some of the earliest mediums that people used, as we discussed, were grease. Another common one I used to see an awful lot, but I don't so much anymore, is shaving cream. Shaving cream isn't quite as thick as grease. Some of the problems with grease, you had to be careful. You had to look through it to make sure that you didn't obscure the path of the bullet. The shaving cream would settle into the areas that you have the baffles and not create an obstruction. I've heard of personal lubricants like KY jelly, even water. Even water works well as a suppressor coolant. And today the product that we're going to be testing as a medium is called silencer juice, and I'll put a link to where it's available right below the video in the description. Silencer juice is a non-corrosive, non-toxic, biodegradable medium, and it's a lot thinner than some of the other mediums that I've used. It's nowhere near as thick as grease. If I had to compare it to anything common, I'd say it's more similar to water in texture than anything else. It's nowhere near as thick or heavy as some of the creams or gels or greases. You insert a very small amount into the muzzle of the suppressor, the end that the bullet is exiting from. And what I find works well is to swish it around, turn it, move it around, and that allows it to spread through. What happens is you eliminate that first round pop that's typical the first time that you shoot a suppressed firearm. And after that, it's filled with inert gases and it doesn't make as much noise. You can actually eliminate that first round pop by using a suppressor juice or pre-charging it. Now, we're going to shoot a few strings for you to see. Hopefully it'll translate for you okay on video. We're going to use 22 long rifle, and we're also going to use 9mm so you can see the difference. So this sound suppressor is a Bowers Paradigm. It's on a GSG 1911 22 long rifle. No suppressor juice. We haven't charged this one. The first shot will be a little bit louder than the follow-up shots. And then we'll follow up afterwards with one after we've added the suppressor juice. Let's add some juice and give it a try. Now, we've got the same gun. We've added 1 milliliter of suppressor juice. Let's see if that makes any difference that is audible through the camera. Well, it sounds quieter from my end, but because it's an effective can in the first place, it may not translate well through the video camera for the reasons we've discussed before. Something you may use to help you hear how quiet it is how much louder the slug is when it hits the coroplast target area downrange. Let's try 9mm. For the 9mm, we're going to use a Glock 17 and a Gemtech Tundra sound suppressor. The ammunition that we're using for this is 147 grain federal ammunition. This is dry. Let's see if we can discern the difference between the first round pop and the rounds that follow. Let's add some juice and try it again. And now we'll try it charged up with the suppressor juice. And I use just a little bit more this time, about 2 milliliters, because we have more volume in this can. Definitely quieter. Absolutely. I hope that came through well. Let's talk about a few other things that relate to an artificial medium in the sound suppressor. That was impressive, and I hope that it translated well through the camera. Although, as we discussed previously, with these little microphones, I don't have a whole lot of hope in how well that's going to work, but it does work well. It was especially noticeable in the 9mm. I don't know how many decibels it dropped, but it was noticeably different, very, very different in person. Now, let's discuss a couple things about using suppressors and suppressor coolant in general. One, this won't be any different as far as you're concerned, because I wear glasses all the time, but you always want to have eye protection on. I know it's a good time to have eye protection every time you shoot, and I do, but it's almost mandatory to have eye protection when you're shooting a sound suppressor, because you've got a chamber that's creating more back pressure, and that follows the path of least resistance, and you can feel things come back. You can feel the hot gases come back through the ejection port and hit you in the face. Now, when you're using a suppressor coolant, depending on what type it is, if we were using grease, I'd be all freckled right now. So this one isn't bad. It wasn't very much difference between no coolant and coolant with this, but it's absolutely imperative to wear glasses if you're going to use sound suppressors, especially on a pistol. Now, unlike some of the cans of yesteryear that were designed just as artificial environmental cans, from the research I've been doing, the vast majority of suppressors today can be used with a medium like this, even though they're not specifically made for it. If you're not sure, check with the manufacturer to be certain, but it seems to be that the rule of thumb is if it's a pistol caliber and it's not a high pressure caliber or a rifle caliber, you're probably going to be fine using some type of suppressor coolant. Most of them recommend that you don't use a suppressor coolant with high pressure rounds like 223 or 308. But check with the suppressor manufacturer to be absolutely certain, because you don't want to do anything that's either going to damage the can, your warranty, or your handsome mug. Your handsome mug, not mine. So in summary, use of a suppressor coolant is helpful because it tends to get rid of the first round pop. It typically lowers the decibel level significantly. It also reduces muzzle flash, and it seems to allow a little bit more performance from a can that may already perform very well. Well, I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it and subscribe and share us with your friends in your vast social media network. If you'd like to pick up some of our cool Bigshooterist gear, you can find us at Bigshooterist.com. And until next time, have fun and be safe.